Hello everyone, welcome to night 39 of the Orphan's Tales live reading series with me, Kat Valenti. So we're getting up on the big 4-0 here. We're about 60 pages from the end of the book, but there's actually quite a lot packed into those pages, so we're hitting a big increase in pacing here. Good to see everyone. If you live in Wisconsin, sorry about that. I'm glad you're here watching this and not at a bar. Hello, kitties. I don't know. It's a day like any other day here, but we're encroaching on the time when we're gonna start opening up again too. So it's all just a mess. I look at the news out of Australia and New Zealand and think, oh well, could have been us in another universe, but I guess it's not. Good times. Let's do our intro business while people sign on here. I'm Kat. I'm going to say my name about 1,000 times for legal reasons. As always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales in the Night Garden. It is a play. A one-woman show, if you will. You can find music based on this book at sjtucker.com, and lots of other great music as well. You can catch up with the archive at Kat Valenti Live on YouTube. I'm sorry, I've fallen behind again, but I will get last night's up as soon as possible. You can find me on Twitter at Kat Valenti. You can subscribe to my Patreon at Kat Valenti as well, where people are right now voting on what I'm going to review this month. What piece of media I'm going to review. As we speak, it's Dark and Star Trek Voyager are neck and neck with Animal Crossing and the bevy of children's edutainment that I'm forced to watch as a parent, tied behind those two. So go over there and have your voice heard. You can ask me questions after the reading if you like. It's okay if you don't. If you don't, the reading will end very promptly at 9. If not, it will go on further as I blather on about things, but sitting here in silence waiting for questions sucks for everyone. So think of them while I'm reading and you can ask them afterwards. And you can leave a tip in my tip jar, which is on my Instagram profile as well as on my website at katherinemvalenti.com and my YouTube profile. You don't have to. These are all completely free. But if you would like to, it is a lot to put this together every night, no matter how I'm feeling one way or another. And times are very tight for us. So it would be deeply, deeply appreciated. And thank you so much to Alyssa, who tipped me last night. I cannot tell you what that means to me. You are my hero. I will thank anyone who does by name on the next stream. I think that's everything. So I've stuck with rum since we've stuck with pirates. And let's get started. Oh, I made such a tiny dog ear last time. I can barely find it. Where did you go? There we go. All right. So we had just ended with some more Orphan's Tales body horror. That was all the rage when this book came out. Like, it was back when sort of the new weird was just kind of starting to decline, and like splatterpunk was the whole thing, and Slipstream and all of that. Like, body horror was it. In that sense, Orphan's Tales is very much a book of its time. I'm not even sure that before 15 years later you can even have a conversation about what of its time means, what the world of 2006 was. But I certainly have been thinking about it a lot over the course of these readings, not only because I am now having to confront every mistake I ever made in writing my first major novel, which is super fun for me as a 41-year-old now, but like having to think back to all those times and what I felt was important then and what I was experiencing, which is nothing that prepared me for what we're all experiencing now. I mean, I think I was prepared more for the advent of live streaming than anything else. Like the fact that I could have this, like I have this little tiny television studio in my house, and it, broadcasts every night. That I could be prepared for in 2006 more than I could be prepared for any of the rest of this. But then I guess that's better. That's a better thing than any of the rest of this. Yeah, Slipstream. That's a name not heard in a long time. Yeah, Slipstream. We used to have panels on it all the time. Just Slipstream panels. And what is a Slipstream Danger or Menace, which is a very popular, or used to be a very popular panel construction. And the Slipstream book list. And what is Slipstream? Like all this kind of thing. And like everyone, I feel like almost everybody was very reluctant to be called Slipstream. And nobody could totally define it. But it seemed to mean like hard, like smart and hard, and maybe a little better than you, which is why it was never that popular. So yeah, I don't even know. It's really hard to say because like Jeff Vandermeer would have been considered new weird back in 2006, and China Mieville as well. But then as soon as Slipstream came along, it also wanted to claim them because they were successful. So it was all very strange. And then everybody just kind of simultaneously, without talking about it, agreed to never mention it again. So now I don't know what we call Slipstream now. Somebody should write something about this. It's very interesting what happened to Slipstream, other than it becoming co-opted into the mainstream almost completely. For God's sake, Jeff Vandermeer's had a major Hollywood movie. Like, it has been entirely co-opted by the mainstream. And I think that you could argue that maybe the story of your life is not Slipstream, but Arrival is. And then we're just off into not talking about my books at all anymore, because I mentioned having to think about, my early work, and then I got uncomfortable and started talking about other people's early work, which is better than mine. Okay, let's go. Let's get with the Pope smacking. that's where we're at tonight. We've got another really cool full-page illustration though. Okay, the net weaver's tale continued. Not that kind of net, the literal kind of net. Okay. That was the last miracle of Saint Sigrid, the great bald woman said as the last red rays of the sun faded like drying blood into the horizon. The light seemed to slide along her tattoos and puddle in her broad face. The others you will learn as you ascend the tower: the miracle of the beard, the miracle of the waterless sea, the miracle of the sacking of Ambarabad. What? I cried. How can you only tell me a part of the story? Did Sigrid stay to mother the griffin, or return to the ship with long-eared Tomomo and live her life as a pirate? Did Oluwafunike keep the ocular? Was there a war? Did the griffins survive? I've heard that they're extinct. Are they not? Are they hidden in some area no man has seen? Stories, the green-eyed Sigrid said, unperturbed, are like prayers. It does not matter where you begin or where you end, only that you bend a knee and say the words. And when we tell St. Sigrid's story, we open ourselves to her. We cannot close ourselves, even if the story must continue on another day. Each miracle of the saint is guarded by the women on one floor of the tower. Should you choose to study with us, you will ascend physically as you become enlightened by the example of Sigrid. The great woman rose then and snuffed out the lantern at the door of the tower. At least tell me how she died. Was it a very heroic death? Did she die saving the griffin or her shipmates? Surely a woman's death is a thing which all may know. Sigrid laughed. A woman's death is the most precious thing she owns. But I will tell you, if you have decided that our tower is to be your home and your mother for all your days. I have, I answered breathlessly. Surely these women who possess such tales were the strongest and wisest of all possible women. Saint Sigrid of the Nest disappeared in her 50th year. Tomomo, though an excellent captain, was not indefatigable. She eventually retired and passed the helm of her ship to Sigrid, her most beloved monster. Yet some years hence the maidenhead was lost at sea, devoured by the Echnasis, a sea monster whose sheer size beggars the mind. It is said that whole cities could fit within its belly, and that its hide is like the shell of a turtle, impervious to all spears. It is the color of the sea itself, so that a ship may be swallowed before her captain is even alerted to the presence of the beast, though its girth mocks even the griffin. This is the thing that swallowed the saint of the boiling sea. All hands were lost. I stood in the blue twilight aghast. How could such a woman as Sigrid not have died crossing swords or defending the innocent? I was very young. Sigrid rubbed her bald head thoughtfully, frowning at me as if struggling with a secret. Some in the tower believe in a prophecy that we refer to as the heresy of the lost. It is said by these women that Sigrid is not dead, but only lost, adrift within the cavernous belly of the Ecnesis whale, and that she lives still. She coughed, clearly thinking this particular tale nonsense not fit for the ears of novices. They fastened their hopes to a fragment of an ancient song which was passed from mother to child in the north of the world where the maidenhead was lost. She closed her eyes and sang softly. Oh, sing of the ship with the mast of leaves and the maiden who stood at her wheel. Long ago, it is said, she was drowned until dead and her red ship was split at the keel. But she never went under, the old mothers know, and she'll sail the brine another day. An orphan will find her, a bear cub will bind her, and the wolf will lead them astray. And hand in hand they'll come whistling home, the maiden, the bear, and the girl in grey. Through the shining white foam the red ship will roam, and the wolf shall lead them astray, and the wolf shall lead them astray. Sigrid's voice was rough and low, like an oar pulling through the dark water. When she opened her eyes, there seemed to be an odd light glimmering there, gentle and sad. I understood then that this Sigrid was a secret heretic, and I smiled to myself. But then, too, I began to believe the heresy, and worse, I began to believe that I was the one destined to find her. Did not the Book of Carrion contain the same lines? Did not the dogmen whisper them as though they must refer to me? Nothing in my life has birthed more pain than the faith I conceived in that moment. There was no light left then, and the Sigrid was silently replaced by another woman as slender as she was muscular, but equally bald. The guard thus changed. The spice-skinned Sigrid took my hand in her huge palm, and I entered the tower of St. Sigrid for the first time. I did not leave it again for 7 years. The Pale Girl's Tale continued. And that is all I can tell you of my first year as an Alinur, Sigrid said, fingering dark patterns on the tavern table where decades of mugs had left their marks. The rest is secret, the province of the Sigrids, and I could no more tell an uninitiated soul of the joys I suffered and the terrors I adored within those walls than I could tell a deaf woman how the sea sounds before a storm. I was accepted into the sainthood. I received a name. We are all Sigrids, but we have our own titles. The saint who is mother to us all is Saint Sigrid of the Nest. The woman who told me that tale on the steps of the tower was Saint Sigrid of the Shallow Keel, and I am Saint Sigrid of the Ways. Wait, cried Snow. That cannot be the end of the story. What about the Black Papas? How did you leave the city? Did you truly not see Bagdemagus for 7 years? How can you stop a tale when so much of it remains a meal half-eaten? She was almost out of her chair with excitement. Snow had never said so many words laid next to each other at once, all laid out for her. Sigrid laughed, her languid, rough-hewn laugh. No, you're right. How impolite of me. There is a bit more to tell. But when I speak of the mother and the mast, I tend to drown in her story, and I forget all the others. It is the way of religion. But Eyvind must fill up our cups again and give us a plate of sweet bread and blackberry jam to strengthen the tale. I am not a small woman. A stringing of stories like pearls on fishing line is not a task for the faint of belly. Eyvind appeared more gracefully and with less commotion than Snow would have thought possible for a man of his size, and furnished them with fresh food and drink. To her surprise, he then dragged a heavy chair to the table and sat down himself to hear Sigrid speak, fixing her with his tired, drooping eyes. She seemed suddenly discomfited, like a bear caught scooping honey from a hive. But she drank deeply and swallowed a few mouthfuls of bread, and eyes darting like fireflies between Eyvind and Snow began again. It is the custom for novices, once their hair is shorn, not to leave the tower for a full 7 years. When they step outside it for the first time, it is not onto the soft grass, but onto the deck of a small boat, and the acolyte spends a circuit of seasons plying the river with her craft, never walking on dry land. Only after this is she allowed to venture into the dreaming city itself. But I was not in seclusion for more than a few months when Bags begged an exception for me. I was not allowed to cross the threshold of the tower, but he came to the gate, and I sat within it, my skull newly bare, and we talked like old friends in need of succor. For the Black Papas had entered the gates of Alanor. The Netweaver's tale continued. I suppose it's Sigrid now, is it? Bags asked, scratching his great furry ear. I sat, legs crossed serenely, determined to act every inch the devout novice. Of course, I intoned, as sagely as I could manage. Bags smiled at me, his grin all teeth and silky muzzle. He leaned over the threshold and whispered huskily, I have always thought it was a beautiful name. I giggled and held out my arms to be embraced over the awkward liminal law of the door I could not exit and he could not enter. He clapped me on the back several times and rubbed my shorn head gently where all my lovely hair had once been. And the sea dog look suits you. Oh, Bags, I've missed you. No fear, lass, we've all missed you. We'd have looked after you in our own tower, but we're glad for you here. Sometimes a woman needs to be with her own. But I haven't come to tell you how pretty you look or dote on you like an old wolf nosing one of his favorite pups. Great things are afoot in the city. Things you couldn't know about, cloistered away in your sail-slung tower. I came to tell you how things fared with the Papas. Fared? I missed the battle. I was furious, of course. In a manner of speaking, Bags nodded, suppressing a giggle himself. But don't worry yourself, little whelp. I've come to tell you of the great contest, the great duel that Yashna fought with Ragnhild in the center of the city. I remembered myself then, and took a step backward into the familiar shadows of my tower. But why should I know these things, Bags, when the other girls are all at their studies and not called to the door like a princess to meet her suitor? If I'm to know it, oughtn't I to wait until the saints tell me in their own way, in their own time? I dropped my voice to a whisper. I'm a good girl. I don't want them to think I'm not. Bags's brown eyes glittered. You are a good girl, my young Sigrid. I would never doubt it. I have spoken to Shallow Keel, and you are mine for the afternoon. As for your right to know above the other girls, if you were a worse student, you would likely know already, for the story has spread through the towers like fire through a village of thatched roofs. But you earn the right to hear it firsthand because you came to the city with us, on the wings of our terrible errand. You are already a part of this story, and you will be a part of its ending before long. Bags settled himself into the corner of the doorframe and took my hands in his. He nuzzled my face a little with his sleek snout and growled slightly with the pleasure of a father who sees his litter grown, hunting swift and strong. Just listen, love, for I have a tale to tell which will be repeated in the alleys of Alanor as long as there are towers to shadow the streets. The tale of the game. Oh, and this one is a bit of a beast. So I do not think that we can possibly get to the end of it before a reasonable hour. It's a monster. So we will pick up with that tomorrow. So I guess we were all set up today. I'm sorry, that's kind of a short one, but I don't want to stop in the middle of a story, and I don't want to go till 9:15 either. So why don't we take some questions and talk about things? Yeah, sorry about that. That ended up shorter than I thought. I didn't, first time in 40 days, I did not space the readings well enough to have a big one, but reading 10 pages at a go is going to take me a lot longer than a few more minutes. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, we are coming down to the end. It's getting there. We'll do the whole tale of the game tomorrow and a couple of the... it'll break up too. But once we've closed out the Black Papas, we've just got a couple quick ones, and then the end. We're really coming up on it. I said that I thought we'd be done on the 15th by the 15th. If I had not had to miss any nights, we would be. But of course I did. And so I think what page did we end on there? We average about 10 pages a night. So we ended, we've got just about 57 pages left. Yeah, I would say that we'll be done this time next week. And will I go on to the next book? Well, I mean, I think so. It's hard to say. When I started this thing, my intention was to go as long as the lockdown lasted. We are all in different states with different lockdowns and different laws. So my instinct is to keep going as long as anybody is under lockdown. And then there are those of us who, even if our state laws are lifted, have every intention of doing what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I mean, if we're done around the 20th or the 21st, we don't even hit phase 1 of lifting the lockdown in this state until June 1st. So I think if you guys want me to, I will start the next book. I know that I said in the first stream, God, I hope we don't ever start the next book. I hope we don't even finish this book. I hope we don't get anywhere near it. I would say that I hope we don't come anywhere close to finishing the second book, which is longer than the first one. Yeah, I mean, I think that I will probably start the next one. Yeah, I think so. You know, it's the same deal as this book. There's no audio for that either. But, you know, as long as people are still interested in it, as long as people are still tuning in every night. Yeah, I mean, it's not a real satisfying ending. Like I said, you know, these were written both as sort of one long book and 4 shorter books. So I think it is neither satisfying an ending as a, you know, second book in a series or the first book in a series. It all has to go together. So I think it's probably worthwhile. If I do start the next one on the 22nd, that's your birthday, and you're going to be staying home in Sacramento at least to the end of June. Well, and you know, I'm not technically from Sacramento, but I lived in the Sacramento area from the time that I was 13 to 20. I went to high school in Davis, junior high and high school in Davis. I went to American River College, and in Carmichael / Citrus Heights. I've lived all over Sacramento, so that's a lovely thought. So let's aim to start the second book on the 22nd. Hopefully there won't be any more nights tonight that have to be cut short to maintain tale structural integrity. But yeah, I think I will start the next book. You know, like, it would certainly be depressing if no one tuned in one night. That might stop it. You know, it's not so much fun doing this that I would want to do it for my health. But I think as long as people are interested, I'll do it. ARC, go Beavers! That was our mascot. It's not some kind of dirty joke. There's a weird statue of a weird beaver, the animal, in the middle of campus. I haven't been back to campus. I haven't been back to Sacramento. God. I think the last time I was in the Sacramento area was for the first Fairyland tour, so like 10 years. 2 May 22nd birthdays, that's awesome. I just haven't been back. I don't, you know, the sort of circuit of conventions and things like that, it's very separate from the East Coast to the West Coast. Because all my family's still on the West Coast, there's been a lot of like, come move back to the West Coast, and part of me really wants to, and then part of me is like, yeah, but I know everyone on the East Coast, like everyone in my community, which of course is very far flung even on the East Coast, but like, you know, there's a convention circuit, and there's a lot more of them on the West Coast, and like the people who go to them are regular, and I know all those people, and I've known them since 2005, and like it's scary to imagine shifting it over to the West Coast, which is a very sort of different culture. But I don't remember why I started talking about that. I'm very tired. I've had a very, very long week. Random question. After years in landlocked Colorado, I've been considering moving to Maine, playing the TV show Haven. Is it true that Mainers are less than keen on transplants? Well, I mean, yes and no. So, yes, they're not. But it used to be way worse than it is now. Like, it really used to be bad. You would never be a Mainer unless you had, 6 generations back, and a family plot in the cemetery. The phrase I heard when I first moved here, was that, like, even if I had a child here, like, Sebastian would never be a Mainer, because if a cat had kittens in the oven, you wouldn't call them biscuits. It's all messed up and xenophobic. But the fact is, at this point, southern, like so many other places, southern Maine has had so many transplants that it's here in Portland, it's not really a thing anymore. Here on the island, I don't know. People are hard to get to know, but they are outwardly friendly. I wouldn't recommend moving to Peaks Island necessarily, but I mean, Portland is probably going to have some more reasonable real estate prices pretty soon, and it's a small, cool, growing city. However, the winters are very difficult. It's still at a stage of growth where a lot of younger people feel that the social scene is difficult to break into. There is one, but it's small because we're a small city. But at the same time, like, well over 50% of the population of the state lives in this county. Some people are very lovely here. It can just take a while to get to know them. But I don't think that xenophobia, and well, I mean, there is xenophobia here, absolutely, but it's just about people from New York and Boston. People from away, that's what Mainers call anywhere but Maine. It's just not the way it used to be, because there's so many of us now. And I've lived here for 12 years, and only recently has, people started to treat me like I live here in any way, as far as, like, being a Maine writer or whatever. So I don't think it's that bad anymore. They're not going to call you a flatlander or anything like that. There's a story Kat wrote, I've always loved, about people who are champions of states and fight for the, yep, that's the Burnt Corn Ranch is what I always call it. So now I can't remember the full name of the something of the world, the shootout of Burnt Corn Ranch, or over the Bride of the World. I can't remember it. I put too many words in that title. I can't remember. Wrote it down so I wouldn't have to remember it. Yeah. Any other questions? The gallery scenes here is pretty good for a small city. The main College of Modern Art is here, or just art, Mecca. And that's actually kind of what transformed the city 25 years ago. And so, yeah, there's a good art scene here. It's a good city. It really is. But not if you are super into big cities. If you're into smaller cities, it's a peach of a smaller city. But it is small. There's only 250,000 people in the greater Portland area, I think. 500,000 people in the southern Maine sort of business area. So it's just not a big place. But if that's not a problem for you, it's awesome. We have great restaurants. But, like, oh God, I can't even tell you what the character of Portland is going to be in a year. I can't tell you that. Like, the restaurant scene is so huge here. Yes, the story is called The Shootout at Burnt Corn Ranch Over the Bride of the World. Too many words, Kat. I can't tell you what Portland is going to be like in a year. A lot of restaurants are going to close. A lot of restaurants are going to move in, probably owned by people from away. Probably much sort of more mainstream kinds of places. I would say real estate prices are going to drop and they're going to shoot right back up again. It's going to be a strange place. I do not know what the character of Portland is going to be like in a year. There's no way to tell. It was already changing drastically year over year, and now this. So I can't even tell you what it's going to be like here. Those of us who crawl out like groundhogs on Groundhog Day. Yes, thank you for remembering the title. Well, I'll do my outro stuff while you consider some further questions. As always, this is not an audiobook of The Orphan's Tales. This is a play. You can find music based on these books at sjtucker.com. Speaking of the character of Portland, Maine, you can buy copies of these books from your local independent bookseller or mine, which is printbookstore.com. You can find me on Twitter at Cat Valenti. You can find me on Facebook at CM Valenti, because somebody had Cat Valenti on Facebook, but not on anything else. I don't know. You can find me on Patreon and subscribe to my Patreon at Cat Valenti, and vote for what piece of media I will be reviewing this month for a new feature. Right now, Dark and Star Trek Voyager are tied. So go break the tie. You can catch up in the archive at Cat Valenti Live. And you can put a tip in my tip jar on the Instagram profile, YouTube profile, or on my website at catherinemvalenti.com. These are free readings, but if you are moved to put a dime in the hat and or the jiggling beaten up trash can, it would be more than appreciated. Times are very tight for us and for all writers and artists and freelancers, and it would mean the world to our little household. And I will thank anyone who does by name, in person, on the next stream. Well, now I feel like there's a whole conversation going on in the feed that I can't interrupt. But yeah, I guess I will see you guys tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Same fairy tale time, same fairy tale channel. And I hope that you all have a very safe and indoors weekend. Even though I guess it's a little early for the weekend, and time no longer has any meaning. So whether or not it's the weekend doesn't matter at all. Stay home, stay inside, stay safe. Love you all.